We're at Sustainatopia 2019 in Miami Beach, and we're a panel on educating tomorrow's leaders, educating for leadership. And we have 4 people on our panel. Dave Finnigan from Green Actioneers, the gentleman in the green shirt. Catherine Ernst from Colorado State University. Emily McGlone from Peace Boat USA. And I'm Mark Pomerantz. I'm from Worldshapers. I'm the moderator of this program. So I thought we would spend maybe a minute or two for each person to introduce themselves and just mention very briefly while they're here. And Dave, why don't you start?
Okay, well, I'm starting a program called Green Actioneers. When I say starting, we've done 26 schools so far, but we called it Climate Change is Elementary. And we did the schools in the Northeast where climate change is recognized and not a political issue. But here in Florida, we don't call it Climate Change is Elementary because climate change is a political issue. We call it Green Actioneers. We work with kids, teachers, and parents, and the families end up with a green action checklist of all the things they promised to do to be good to the planet and to save money for the families.
Great. Our next panelist is Emily McGlone from Peace Boat. Emily, do you want to tell us about Peace Boat a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, so I've been working with Peace Boat for about 15 years, and I currently work as the director of the New York office of Peace Boat in the United Nations Plaza. Our organization was founded in Japan in 1983 as a way to bridge cultures and people together across borders and to promote a culture of peace and understanding and sustainability. So right now we are sailing the world on this ship. We use the boat as a space that is a neutral, encompassing, and encouraging space for learning and activism. We have about 1,000 people traveling on the ship with us. And one of our major goals right now is promoting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So Peace Boat also works in consultative status with the UN, and we have this logo painted on the side of our ship. So as we sail around the world, we are encouraging education about the SDGs and also learning from the communities that we go to visit. We invite guest speakers on board to talk about all these different issues related to human rights, environmental sustainability, education, gender, indigenous issues, and holistically look at peace building and sustainability. So the reason I'm here at Sustainatopia is to raise awareness about our next project, which is to build the world's first eco-friendly cruise ship. Oh my. And this will be setting the example for solar and wind power. So that's what I'm here to talk about.
Could you
today.
pass that around?
Yeah, sure.
Did the people from Carnival Cruise see that?
I'm curious.
Yeah.
There, if you like.
Did the Carnival Cruise people see that?
They did a little bit. I talked to a few of them here and there. So.
Okay, well get that word out to them.
Our idea is to set the example, to be like the Tesla of the cruise ships and change the maritime industry from the inside out with an educational purpose for sustainability.
That's really exciting, and I understand this boat has huge solar-powered sails.
That's right.
That replace a lot of the fossil fuel energy,
Yeah, that's
and
the idea.
that's
Reducing it by
super
40%.
exciting.
Yeah.
Wow.
For our oceans, this is to change the maritime industry, not just our ship, but to set the example.
So, Kat, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Catherine Ernst. I am the director of the Global Social and Sustainable Enterprise MBA, but we are rebranding because that's a mouthful. So we'll be the Impact MBA starting in fall of 2020.
The Impact
And
what?
Impact MBA. So we're a Masters of Business Administration. We're entering our 13th year. We're at Colorado State University. We're a full-time on-campus MBA program where all of our students are building businesses that are solving social and environmental challenges as part of their pedagogy, as part of the learning process in the program. So it's woven into all the courses and all 3 semesters of the program. So we're a very unique MBA. And we're looking forward to the next 10 years as the Impact MBA, where we're expanding our scope to incorporate interdisciplinary work to really prepare students to address climate change within corporations. So
This is in Fort Collins.
we're in Fort Collins, correct? Yeah.
The first place you can see the Rockies.
Yes, and it's a lovely place to be.
Beautiful place.
Yeah.
So I'm Mark Pomerantz. I'm the moderator of the panel. Briefly, my background is in government. I was an urban planner. I worked in land use, human services, and nonprofit capacity building, and worked with the group that developed the first social venture fairs in the country. And so I've been interested in social entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship education for many years. So the format of this panel is we have 4 questions, and we're going to pose them and get some feedback from all the members of the panel. And let me just read the first question. Are our schools appropriate venues for studying and promoting sustainability and other social change projects? So Dave, would you like to start off?
There was a recent NPR study that was a survey of thousands of people around the country, and the question was posed to parents. Do you want your children to learn about climate change in the school? 80% of parents across the board said yes, they do. But then they found out that about 20% of teachers feel comfortable talking about climate change. So there's a great disparity between what parents want and what teachers want. And this was independent of political party. Over 60% of Republican parents wanted their kids to learn about climate change in the school. So it's not only appropriate, but it's time. It's very timely. And that's why what we're doing, I think, is really on the leading edge, because we're getting kids, teachers, and parents to sit down and work together to solve the problem at the household level. Well, once they get the problem solved at the household level, then it spreads throughout society, just as it did with recycling and littering and anti-drug and anti-smoking campaigns and click it or ticket, clicking your seatbelt. All of that started with the kids. And so this can start with the kids too. Nobody's tried it yet, but it's time.
Great. So Emily, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think obviously we're focused on education for peace and sustainability. So absolutely, having education in the schools with social impact and social programs focused on sustainability and climate action is one of our goals. And we had students as young as 2 to 7 years old in a Montessori education program. So I've seen the young children kind of be like sponges. They soak up all of that information and they really learn so much quicker than you would imagine. And starting at that age, I think, is really important. So having it in the school systems, having it in the after-school programs. One of the groups that we work with is called Global Kids, and they have after-school programs that actually works just to do that, to get this information into the schools. And they are working with underserved youth in different programs. And some of the youth that come on board, we invite them, just one image here from the Global Kids, but we invite them to also talk about the SDGs that are important to them. So they choose one of the Sustainable Development Goals, or 2 or 3 that are most important, and they get on stage, and when they present about them, you see that they're digesting that information, and they're also explaining it to people. And it's a great learning exercise, and the youth that come out of our programs for the SDGs, they know every single one of the Sustainable Development Goals when they come out of that program. And it's, better than anybody who was here at the conference today. They're like, oh, is it 14 to 13? They just know it. Yeah, and it's great. So I think definitely it should be part of every kind of educational program.
Did you say that there's a Montessori school on the Peace Bowl?
There is, yes.
For kids 2 through 7?
2 to 7, yeah. And that's just the beginning. You can always be older, but that's the beginning.
If Maria Montessori were alive today, she would be on that boat. She had such a great structure for education, and she would be one of us. There's no doubt about it. She's at the conference today.
It is such a good idea. Younger people learning from the older ones, and in the same classroom, and sharing ideas, and that multi-generational experience of traveling and working together and learning together is very important.
All of our education is experiential.
Yes.
We turn the kids into frogs, we turn them into polar bears, we turn them into penguins, and then they get to explore what it's like to be a frog, penguin, or a polar bear.
And it's maturation, like you said today. It's learning through experience. What you said this morning really hit home, because I said, that's right, that's what we do. It's learning through experience. You don't forget it. You can't forget it. And that's better than just reading in a book.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, everything
Back what you and Dave are saying.
Everything you guys are doing is working because they're demanding it when they come to graduate education. Like they demand that it be experiential, that they address climate change. And if it's not in a class and it should be, they push the professors on it. They're not. They're really forward thinking, and at least a tiny subset of students that come to our program. But so there are seeds of it. So it's great to see more of that coming. Yeah.
How many students in the program?
We only recruit for 25. It's a really intimate program, and so we're never going to be able to scale it the way that we would like to. But
Why?
because we're full-time on campus, and so we're very limited by resources. So we're going to try to come up with entrepreneurial online methods to put some of it out there. But the program, as it is going to be.
You know what Penshaw U is, right?
Yep. Yep.
Master's program.
They're a #1 competitor.
Right.
Oops.
Or ally.
I do send students to them when it's not a great fit.
Excuse me, you're into the
Totally.
environment, so everything is
Yep.
cooperating
We-
with everybody else.
That's what I was like.
It is more collaborative, yeah.
So if I need, for my program, I need to have some
You're
interns.
standing.
I might be able to get in touch with you and get interns who could help me to change what I've got into something much more glorious.
Absolutely. We have interns at Colorado State University in every
There's a
possible
video
avenue.
camera behind
so,
you.
Certainly. Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's exciting. When I did my doctoral work in educational leadership,
My card.
one thing we studied very briefly, there used to be a school of education or philosophy education called social reconstructionism or reconstructionism. And that was bigger during the Depression in the 30s and supported by organizations like labor unions. And they said, you know, the schools are the place to do social change. And this kind of lasted, I think, into the 1950s. But then McCarthyism came, and this whole idea became less and less popular. And I think today you'll find a lot of people who kind of object to the idea that, you know, maybe we shouldn't impose ideas that are affiliated with, you know, political parties or schools of politics like climate change. So what you guys are doing, you know, what you're doing in particular, Dave, is really exciting because you're getting the kids excited about these green projects from the standpoint that they're fun to do, they're helpful to the earth. You know, it's almost like getting involved with superheroes. And the whole areas that could harbor conflict are sort of being avoided. And I think that's a very interesting approach. Anyway, our next question is, and this might involve Kat a little bit more, should sustainability and social entrepreneurship be separate academic disciplines in the schools, particularly the schools of higher education?
Right, and I think typically you do see that. You see at least separate courses, and they're electives, and it's a little standalone unit. But when you go work in a company, it's not separate. So you have to interact with all of the different disciplines. You have to understand how they all play together. So we take a very integrated approach where every core class has elements of sustainability and social entrepreneurship and innovation woven into the core. Some classes, it's a smaller percentage because they have to learn the basics of accounting, but even in accounting, they're learning about the Sustainable Accounting Standards Boards, and in their marketing class, they're looking at how are they going to be approaching a demographic that's typically underserved. And so there are elements woven into all of the core content in our program, and that's what our college believes is the best way to address it. But it's very non-standard. You'll find most programs have them as add-on courses and electives within a pretty isolated unit, and so I think there's a lot of change that needs to happen there.
Well, at University of Central Florida, sustainability is an interdisciplinary course taught by a professor of interdisciplinary studies, and he brings anybody from around the campus in for his core course.
To address all those topics.
And
That's
so
great.
I've had 38 interns in 3 semesters.
That's great, yeah.
And the last thing that we did, and it was so much fun, is I assigned each of them 7 items on the Green Actioneer checklist and had them write a chapter for each of those 7. And so now we've got a book. So it's a crowdsourced book that we put together in a semester in an interdisciplinary course.
Brilliant.
So yeah, it worked. And it'll be published next year.
So it's interesting. It sounds like while there may be, you know, some dedicated courses, in social entrepreneurship or sustainability, a lot of this material is being interwoven into lots of different kinds of courses in different schools, in business schools and engineering, design, whatever. So that's exciting. All right, I want to ask the panel, and particularly Dave.
Oh, no.
I mean, how can we get families, and we talked about this a little bit, but how can we get families all over the US and in other countries as well to take actions that help solve the climate crisis
Well,
without having them buy into, as we talked about, buying into any kind of political agenda?
Well, in Florida, that's really important, because in Florida, if I were to go out and do my climate changes elementary program in the schools, I can guarantee you there'd be 3 or 4 dads who would show up that evening, probably toting guns, but certainly angry that I was bringing this communist propaganda to the school. So we don't talk about climate change. We talk about going green. We talk about green actioneers. We talk about having a clean green future for their kids and saving green for the parents. And if they want to talk about climate change, I've got a big banner that goes up on the wall, and it says, whether the climate is changing or not, and whether people are responsible or not, these kids deserve a clean green future. Let's give it to them. And so if somebody comes in with that chip on their shoulder, then we all stand up as a group and we all read that. And we read it out loud. And then I guarantee you, they tuck the tails between their legs and leave. In the 26 schools that I've been in so far, there's almost always been one person who came in with an attitude, and we've always been able to quiet them and get them to join the group. So I think the approach to take is exactly what I said in that banner, that I don't care if the climate's changing or not. These kids ought to have a green future, so let's give it to them.
So that leads into the next thing I want to ask the panel, which is, so how can we bring together in the educational context students who might have different worldviews and help reconcile their differences to promote more collaboration and more collaborative social change? I mean, not just on the elementary level, but in the higher education and in the adult education level. I mean, how can we do that better?
Yeah, I mean, I think from our side, it's more about encouraging people to learn first about what are the issues. Sometimes the issues are not so apparent, that for us, for example, bridging peace and sustainability is not always so common. A lot of people don't connect. Also, I was just talking about at the United Nations this week, there's a conference on disarmament and connecting disarmament for development. If there's funding that's being spent on nuclear warfare or weapons, using that funding for education, sustainability, or social projects. So sometimes just linking the issues first and helping those students get together and seeing the connection is a first step to building that interconnected collaborative work and having young people come together. And I think that's one thing that the Sustainable Development Goals, again, do, because there's 17 goals, but they all need to come together in Goal 17, which is partnerships. So it doesn't really matter which one you're working on, they're all connected. And I think that platform itself is a great way to bring people and to raise awareness and to have them learn about the issues first and then see how they can collaborate.
Well, from a higher education perspective, I mean, recruiting is what we do. We're always recruiting new students. And there's a lot of intentional outreach happening for people from all different backgrounds. And in my program, we seek out international students, and we bring in, we're an MBA program, so we're in the business school, but only about 40% of our students have a background in business. The majority come from non-business disciplines.
Really?
Yeah, and so our courses are designed to cover all the prereqs, so there are no prerequisites, and so everybody can come in and start from the same floor and can grow together. And that enables us to bring all these diverse perspectives to the table, because that's the only way we're going to solve complex global challenges and be able to address the whole range of SDGs, right, is if we have folks who have these backgrounds in all these different disciplines. So that's pretty critical for us, and we sort of take a very broad definition of diversity when we think about what those different avenues are, because any form of that is useful. So, but it's hard. You have to be intentional about seeking out those populations who are typically underserved and underrepresented. And that takes manpower and funding and scholarships and everything. So yeah.
Well,
It's not easy.
from my standpoint, I was one of the few lonely voices in government that had an interest in social entrepreneurship as far back as 20 years ago and more. And the more I've studied it, the more strongly I feel that social entrepreneurship is, whatever you call it, a discipline, an interdisciplinary construct. It's something that brings people together. It bridges different worldviews. People, whether they're, traditionalists, modernists, progressives, whatever you want to call them, postmodernists. There's sort of a general recognition that poverty is a tremendous problem, that it's getting hotter, that we need to do a better job of delivering services, and that social entrepreneurship is a way to do that. Whether you're doing it in the U.S. or you're doing it in the less developed world, it's something that people seem to be in agreement needs to be done and should be done. And I find that exciting. I find that as something that should be exploited more to build more collaborations, both on the community level and the national and global level. So, Emily, did you want to talk more about the UN Sustainability Development Goals in terms of how that relates to leadership education?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's been mentioned just a few times here in the conference for everybody who was here yesterday as well. But the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that we're all promoting on the Peace Boat through education have been kind of the basis of raising awareness for so many different issues. We look at them in like I mentioned, also a holistic viewpoint. So, for example, I led a program to Latin America recently where we started in Mexico, and then we went to Panama, went to the Panama Canal, and up to Guatemala and El Salvador. And instead of just going through the Panama Canal, we would talk about the indigenous communities that are there, and we spent the night and did a homestay program with indigenous communities. So looking at sustainable development goals is not something that's just a high level issue, and you're not just learning from the United Nations perspective, but also from the grassroots level. So we learned about how climate action and sustainability can affect local communities. And then we also got to go to the United Nations regional office in Panama. So in the same experience, you're going to the grassroots level and then having the youth also giving presentations with the United Nations and learning from those high-level representatives about how it's being implemented in Latin America. So for me, I think that in a conference like this and in people who are working in education for sustainability, it's really important to kind of incorporate innovation and social responsibility. We talk about education, gender equality, which we've had a lot of, I think, good gender balance in a lot of the conversations here this weekend. And it's just something that I think should be involved in everybody's work and life. So first of all, us educating ourselves and helping to educate others about these goals, which are supposed to be met in 2030. And these are very lofty goals. And as we know, with current political situation, it's very challenging to kind of work on all these goals. So it does take partnership, and I think it takes everybody coming together and bringing them into our daily lives and also all of our work in education.
Now, among your 1,000 people who are on this ship, how many of them are students?
Well, we have I'd say out of 1,000 people, quite a range of ages. The Montessori education program is maybe 10%, let's say. And we have ages 18 to like 35, 40, another 40%. And then the other participants on board are retirees, I would say 40 years old up to 90. I think our oldest person on the ship has been around 92, 93. So the Peace Boat just offers a platform because it's easy to travel on a ship. You don't have to fly everywhere, you can leave your luggage in the room. So it's comfortable and it's a great space for learning. And we don't always organize all the programs on board. We promote all of the SDGs through our educational programs, but we're also inviting the participants, just like they do in this conference, to bring their own workshops and bring their own knowledge and sharing to the table. So there's more than 60 events every single day on the ship for all ages.
Oh my God, that's exciting. Who are these people who go on the ship? How do I volunteer?
You can volunteer on our website, peaceboat.org. Yeah.
Is it a volunteer thing, or do they
You can
pay?
volunteer. Most people pay. We're also a social business. Everybody pays to go on the ship. and that money gets recycled back into our nonprofit activities. So I'm the director of the 501c3 nonprofit side, but there is the social business side, and we're completely self-sustainable.
So you are a successful social enterprise, and donations are mainly used to
Provide
support
scholarships
scholarships.
for young people or specific projects, disaster relief, or education about specific topics, which is also important. But I think you had a question.
No, I think you answered. I was curious as to, if you give me the 30-second spiel on it, then you just did it.
What are the different nationalities of the people on board?
Well, the Peace Boat was started in Japan, so the majority of our staff members, we have about 100 staff around the world, are mostly based in Tokyo. But we have Japanese, Chinese, Korean, a lot of people from Singapore as well. We have another office there, and about 40 nationalities represented on board. And our volunteers come from all around the world, so there are ways to volunteer. I was a Spanish teacher when I joined the Peace Boat for the first time. You can teach Spanish, English as a second language. Also translators, those who are interested in learning and translating all of our guest speakers' lectures.
Do you have headsets for people to get translation?
We do, yeah. Similar to the United Nations, we have somebody on the side, which are also volunteer translators, working with each guest speaker to translate all the lectures. A lot of logistics, a lot of planning goes into each lecture.
And then, so the ship is pulling in, pours into doing community development work inside of each region that you go to?
That's right. So in every country that we visit, and as we're visiting, we have a northern hemisphere route, a central and a southern hemisphere. So we're 20 countries on each global voyage, and those alternate between different hemispheres.
How long's the voyage?
3 months long. And most people do the entire voyage because, we're sailing around the world, so that's kind of the exciting part. You don't want to go halfway around the world, that's not that. So our educational programs on board are the educational aspect with guest speakers coming from each country and from the programs that we have in the ports. And then when we're doing the in-port activities or activities on land, we are going to learn from those communities, sometimes doing volunteer projects. We could be doing planting with the Green Belt movement with, Nobel Peace laureates like Wangari Maathai, who passed away, but we work with her organization. Also working with, this is, for example, a Palestinian refugee camp in Jordan, which was one of my most impactful experiences, spending the night doing a homestay there. Or helping to learn about music. Sometimes we do cultural exchange through music. You might learn an instrument, and then they bring djembes on board from Kenya and South Africa, and they do djembe workshops for a week. And it's all related to the places that we go. So depending on the route, if you're in the southern or northern hemisphere, we have programs about different issues in each country.
So if I was going to speak on your boat, would I come onto the boat in Miami or something, and then get off of the boat in New York or something like that?
Probably you would join in New York and get off in Cuba.
In Cuba,
That could
and
be
then,
a short
then
leg.
fly back.
Sure. Yeah. Or you could go to Panama and then come back. Yeah. So each voyage, you can kind of have a look here at some of the ports. But each voyage, there's about 5 to 6 days between each country, unless you're crossing over the large expanse of ocean from like Namibia, West Africa, over to Brazil, which is about 12 days at sea. And we always break that up with a large festival. We do like a samba festival getting close to Brazil, or something major that everybody participates in, makes their handmade clothing and decorations. So everything is really interactive, experiential, and all focused on education.
For those of us that are really interested in ships, can you tell us a little bit about your present ship and this exciting new ship that you're building?
Sure. Yeah, well, so as we're sailing around the world, and the oceans have become such a major topic over the past few years, especially the United Nations and Peace Boat, we have a special relationship where we have special consultative status with the United Nations. We are,
So do you have special permission to have that logo for the 7th?
We do, yeah. We're actually in accordance in partnership with the SDGs Action Campaign for Sustainable Development.
Okay.
And so we thought, if we're going to be really sailing as the flagship for the Sustainable Development Goals, we need a more sustainable cruise ship. And they don't exist in the world today.
Yeah, right.
So in 2017, the United Nations held the first Oceans Conference focused on SDG number 14 for life below water. It was the first time at the UN that there was a conference held on just one sustainable development goal, because usually they have various ones that they're integrating. And so we said our commitment to the United Nations is going to be to build this, eco ship.
But you already have a pretty nice ship, right?
It's a very nice ship. Yeah,
can
but
you
this
describe
one's gonna
that?
be better because it's going to use these retractable
Okay.
solar and wind panels,
Yeah.
which will help propel the ship and reduce our CO2 by 40%. We will have inside the
Those
ship.
sails on the top?
They are sails, yeah, retractable sails. And we'll have inside each of the cabins, well, one difference is going to be more cabins. So The ship now holds 1,000 people, and the eco ship will hold 2,000 people. Because we're expecting growth, because it will be more sustainable, it should be more interesting. for people to
Absolutely.
travel. And each cabin will have meters on how much energy you're using. So it's about social awareness as well. Today you say, oh, I use 80%, tomorrow I'm going to use 70. You know, you need to continue raising awareness through little actions that could be, you know, just saving energy in your own cabin. The inside of the ship as well, we're going to have a garden. So I can show you a few examples of the garden, but we're planning to have courses on, you know, how to do organic farming and to grow your own vegetables and do something that's hands-on. Aquaponics also could be interesting, and to use that on the ship. And of course, all the materials and the way the energy is used inside, recycling the gray water, reducing the amount of you know, smoke and everything that's put into the air from a cruise ship, which can be quite a lot. So we're really working on building those partnerships and using the solar energy. When you're traveling in the ocean, you're surrounded by sun and waves and water and wind. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be harnessing that renewable energy and putting that forth. And we also want to be a space for green innovation and technology and a showcase of innovative ways that we can promote a more sustainable future. Because the Peace Boat, right now, we get quite a lot of attention when we go into a port and people see Peace Boat with the SDGs logo. They're like, what is this ship we haven't heard of? And you know, it's exciting, it's a press point. But if we go into a port sailing with retractable wind sails and solar panels, it's going to be even more impressive. So we hope to use it as something that people actually look to for an example, and then to set the standard for the maritime industry. That's the real goal, is to actually reduce the CO2 that's going into the ocean from the other cruise lines like Carnival, who has a fleet of ships.
Yes, right.
We only have one, and we might have more in the future, but they have more right now.
They should pay attention to what you're doing.
Yeah, we had a few discussions, so we're trying to see how we can, you know, kind of collaborate.
Did you talk to the Carnival lady who was here?
Yeah, I did a little bit. Yeah.
So let me just ask you, these sails, they're solar sails, but they're also wind sails?
That's right. Yeah, wind sails with solar panels on the side.
I see.
Solar voltaic sails on the side. Yeah.
Do you do follow-up at this point on the people, kids particularly, who have graduated from the Peace Boat and find out what they're doing and whether they're actually still doing things that are part of the SDGs?
Sure. Well, we've had, since 1983, tens of thousands of people who've traveled on the Peace Boat. And we do have, you know, alumni groups online. We have also reunions. So we number our voyages. So actually in front of Terry there, you have, if you hold, it just shows the numbers on here. And we are actually right now on our 101st global voyage around the world. Wow. I just came off the ship. I was in Patagonia last month with a group of youth focused on climate action, seeing the glaciers and the mountains and sailing through the fjords of Patagonia to really get a sense.
Wow.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Every year I go to Patagonia.
I think we're all going to sign up.
Yes. And now we're on our 101st global voyage, which is going to be coming to New York. So you're also invited on World Oceans Day, June 7th and 8th. We'll be holding the official World Oceans Day celebration with the United Nations on board. And those are opportunities for people who've been on board to come back together and volunteer again. And we try to keep up with our alumni as much as possible. It's quite a lot of people. And we are, you know, a very small team, 100 people working for Peace Boat. For the amount of work we do is quite small. So.
Well, are you ready for a juggling lesson?
Yes.
I think I could pay my way by teaching everybody on the boat how to juggle. What do you think?
Yes, and we do actually work with youth, sometimes using arts and creativity, and we've had one of the most famous jugglers from Korea come on board and do performances and
competition.
More famous than Dave?
Great.
Yeah, more famous
His
than
name
Dave.
might have been Dave in Korea.
What's the so how do you fund this?
We're self-funded, so people pay to come on board the ship.
So outside of that, the operation cost is getting funded solely by the tickets, and you said it's a 501c, so you're doing fundraising events.
You know, I don't really have a fundraising division in New York, so it's something I would love to kind of increase in the next few years. If you know, you all have ideas for us, I'm happy to work with you. Yeah. Oh, great.
With using media and technology.
Oh, great. Well, we should.
We will after this.
Yeah. For
That
sure.
was
So
questions about the new boat. When is it going to be built, and how much is that thing going to cost?
It costs about $750 million to build an eco-friendly cruise ship like this with this design.
Yeah.
We've got about 80% right now, we think, financed. We're still looking for another 20% for anyone out there who wants to partner with us. And we are planning to start building very soon, probably either in Helsinki in Finland or maybe in the Netherlands. We're just negotiating with the shipyards. And once we get started, we're hoping to sail by 2022. So not too far off. It's very soon.
That's what I want to be on.
Yeah.
You know, I noticed that some people joined us midway, so can we just introduce ourselves very briefly?
Maybe you can start. So I'm Kat. I'm with Colorado State University with the MBA program there called the Global Social and Sustainable Enterprise MBA.
Okay, Catherine Ernst.
Yeah.
And
I'm Emily from Peace Boat and also the EcoShip Project.
okay, Emily McGlone. I'm Mark Pomerantz from Worldshapers. My website's worldshapers.net.
And I'm Dave Finnigan from Green Actioneers, and we go into schools and get kids and teachers and parents excited about going green.
I'd love to